Hey everyone, it's Chelsey. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm so excited to share with you a new set of thin cuts. This is the layered floral background, and it actually comes with these 3 dies all in one set. So when I saw this, it kind of captivated my imagination, and I started playing and trying out all different kinds of combinations, different ways to use this die, and I just had to share it with you guys. So I have several different techniques and a lot of samples to show you that I came up with using this die. This die cuts these 3 panels by themselves, especially this one doesn't look like a lot. This one looks pretty much like a complete design that you could use by itself, but these 2 look a little plain. So the magic happens when you layer all of these together, and hopefully you can see all that dimension. It's just beautiful, and you can make some really simple and classy cards. Your 4th layer is whatever color you choose to put underneath, whether it's another layer of white. I'm going to show you a few different combinations that I came up with. How I like to adhere these is actually on these ones that have more solid areas, I just use my tape runner. This one too, you can pretty much sneak your tape runner in there, or you can use liquid glue. And then for this one, because it is a lot more delicate, I usually use my liquid adhesive. So keeping this basic kind of white on white look in mind, I came up with this wedding card. Would also make a good congratulations, anniversary card, a baby card, all kinds of things. And I love how adding those pearls, and then I have a strip of vellum here with a little bit of silver embossing, just adds slight shimmer and interest to this rather basic card, but makes it actually look very elegant. Now for this one, I took that same idea of just the white, but I put black in the background, and for my 2nd layer, I used the pearl paper. So you can see that little bit of shimmer that you get from that. It's subtle, but it really adds something special to this card. And then I took sparkles and put it in the circle areas, and then this piece here is just black cardstock embossed with silver embossing powder. I will list for sure everything that I use down in the description box, and I will link everything that is current. Most things are current. This stamp set here is actually a stamp of the month back from May of this year, so you can't get that one anymore, but everything else I will list and link below for you. Now, one thing I will mention is I used foam pop dots to pop this up. What I wish I would have done, and what I did for other cards, is I wish I would have just stacked strips of cardstock so they would have been a little bit more solid. You might be able to see this has a little bit of a wave going on, and that's because you're sticking it on over a textured surface. So what I would recommend is actually just adhering your strips of paper together. So maybe 3-4 layers of cardstock, or even chipboard. You could do a layer or 2 of chipboard underneath this to give it a nice firm base, so it lays a little bit more flat and not so curvy. This one is a fun one. So you can definitely see the shimmer on this one. So the top layer is actually cut from that white pearl paper, and the nice bling you're seeing in the background here is actually Dreamy holographic paper. So it's looking pretty blue, and there is a shift of yellow to it as well. And this will change a little bit depending on what colors are around it. But very pretty, lots of shine and bling. And then I colored the images with my Copics and used just a little bit of glisten stickles on the horn there and on the sparkles around the word. So definitely a fun combination. And then of course I had to do some Christmas ones. So this one I actually eliminated a layer. I used the top layer, the middle layer, and then I left out this bottom layer. So this one just has scarlet cardstock, gold foil, and then evergreen cardstock. And then I stamped on a stitched bracket here and cut the end off. And then this is a poinsettia from the Comfort and Joy scrapbooking set, as well as the greenery. And a little bit of stickles there in the middle and some clear shimmer brush over top of the stamping for some shimmer on that as well. So a nice fun Christmas card. Now this has major bling. I did all 4 layers, so my solid layer in the background and then all 3 die cut layers I did out of gold foil, which is pretty awesome. You got some serious shine there. And then the sentiment here is cut from the Season of Joy Cricut cartridge, and I cut several of them and stacked them on top of each other. And then I took my clear shimmer brush, it went over top, and then a layer of liquid glass. So I'll see if I can rotate there. Yeah, you can see that nice bubbling, that's from the liquid glass. And that little bit of sparkle is from the clear shimmer pen. And then for the greenery on this sentiment, I actually cut that from evergreen glitter paper and also put liquid glass on top of it. So definitely a very sparkly, shiny card, but that's what Christmas is all about. And then of course I had to try a combination with the blues. I could have just kept going and going on this. Like, there were so many different combinations that I wanted to create. I used Majestic holographic paper. I used Peacock cardstock, Lagoon cardstock, and Mint cardstock for my layers here. And then silver glitter paper for my snowflakes. And then just white cardstock here for my sentiment piece. And then these nice little silver glitter gems are a good little accent to this as well. So lots of bling, very Christmassy. Okay, so now that I've showed you kind of the basic, just cutting the dies from different kinds of paper and doing different combinations, layering them together, I wanted to show you this technique, which involves embossing one layer and then die cutting the top layer. So you can see lots of dimension there. It's just kind of a fun look. This is how it looks, just the top cut out of craft cardstock. And then I have a panel of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cardstock that I'm gonna emboss. And now in order to use your die to emboss, you need to have, I have the Big Shot machine, so you need to find out what the embossing sandwich is for your machine. And then you also need some kind of silicone mat. This is the one I have. I've had it for years, so I can't even tell you where I got it from. I know once upon a time, like Spellbinders had them. I want to say this is maybe like Cherry Lynn Designs. You just look around for a embossing mat that fits the Big Shot is what you need. And then I have a cutting plate and my top cutting plate. So I'm actually going to open up all the tabs on my plate. There should be 2 tabs on here, but this is a very old plate and one of them is busted. So I have, there's my base platform with all the tabs open. I have my cutting plate, my silicone mat. Then I'm going to take my cardstock and the middle die. Now I think I probably want to washi tape this in place because I don't want it moving on me. So I'm just gonna put that on top of the die and then washi it into place. Okay, so I got my tape on there. I'm gonna put it cutting side down onto that mat. That's what's gonna keep it from cutting, and that's what's gonna make it emboss. And then I'm just gonna roll this through my Big Shot. Okay, so now I've rolled that through and I removed the tape, and this is what I'm left with. So it gave me a very deep embossing. It didn't cut through though, it just embossed it. But by itself, it's kind of whatever. But once you add this over top, look at that. It just gives such a nice effect. And you could play around with doing different colors and different types of paper and things like that. Now that I showed you how to do the background, I also want to show you how I did my leaves. I did basically like a rock and roll technique, except with the Distress Oxide. So I'm using Spice Marmalade and Candied Apple. And you always want to go into your lighter color first. This maple leaf stamp is from the Hawthorne scrapbooking stamp set. This is actually a set from last fall. But there is an online only section on my website, and there is quite a few stamp sets and products from over the last year or so. So if there's things that have been retired and you're looking for them still, check the online only section of my website. So I'm just pouncing it to get like a really good coverage, and then I'm going to take it to my red, and I'm just gonna gently roll. I'm not laying the whole thing on there. I am just kind of rolling the edges. So I'm holding up part of the stamp and I'm kind of laying the other part in. And then I'm just going to kind of tap over those areas because I'm trying not to get like a really harsh line. And because the Distress Oxides sit on top of your stamp, you can see what you're doing, see where the ink is at. And there we go. So that one I kind of rolled it around the outside. You can see on this one I kind of just did like part of the design. The yellow one here is actually with mustard seed and then spice marmalade around the edges. This cute little pumpkin I colored with the orange tri-blend marker as well, and then put liquid glass on top of it. I have a little bit of the gold thread on there and gold glitter gems. So makes for a very nice sparkly fall themed card. So next up, I want to show you how I made these two cards out of the same three panel stack. I used the circle here that I cut out from here to make this secondary card. So I kind of wanted to show you the process of how I did this, because you want the circle to line up on all your layers in the exact same place. So first off, what I did is I took a panel, my top panel, and I just kind of found the center or wherever you want your circle, and I just cut it out first. Then you're going to take your next size panel, this is the middle panel, and you're going to want to put those together. You may even want to add just a little piece of washi tape to hold them, because you really don't want these shifting. You want this to be in the exact spot. So I'm just going to stick those together. And then you just nestle this die down into that opening that you created with the first die. And the nice thing is, once you've created this top template, you can save it and keep using it to make more cards. You don't have to start over. You can keep using that top template. So I'm just going to use little pieces of washi tape to hold my circle in place, and then just cut it in my Big Shot. Okay, so now I have that cut out. I'm going to save this. And you can see how those are going to perfectly line up. Now I'm going to swap out my middle layer for my third layer, and do the exact same thing. So tape it into place, put my die down in there, and then I'll run it through my machine. All right, so now you can see what I have left here. I have this stack with the circles cut out, and I have this stack with the circle. Then I cut two of the frames. The circles that I'm using is from the shaker window and confetti dies. So this is the frame that comes in that die, and then I've been using just like the plain circle that comes with that, because I wanted something a little bit bigger. So I cut one from plain white cardstock, and I cut one from the pearl cardstock, just because I wanted to make this a little bit thicker. And this is going to get stuck around the edge like that. And then also behind it, I took a circle, just one of the plain circles, cut with that pearl paper, and that's going to go under it like that. And this is how I got this kind of ornament looking design on the front of my card. The charcoal cardstock there is embossed with this floral lace embossing folder. And then I also used this small bow which is this little bow here. It's a thin cut and it cuts out these two pieces. Now, if you were using just colored cardstock, you could stick those together and then just bend this middle piece over. But because it's glitter cardstock, I just take my scissors and cut this little guy off. And then I stick my bow down. Usually I like to use the tiny glue dots. Stick it together and then use that little piece to go over the center. And then I just glue that into place. So that's how I got this bow here. And then my Merry Christmas is embossed with white onto vellum with a little sparkle there in between. So that's where that piece goes. And then to finish this off, you can see how the edges are really rough. I wouldn't want to leave these edges without some kind of nice finish to them. So I actually created a little circle frame on my Cricut. So I went to Design Space, I measured it out what size I needed, and I just took 2 circles and sliced it to make a frame. And then I cut it out 3 times. Because of the texture on here, I needed that thickness so that it wouldn't be all like wobbly and wonky looking. So that will get stuck there. And then I put a piece of ballerina cardstock underneath. You could do any color you want. And then for my poinsettia, I used that same Comfort and Joy scrapbooking Stampin' Thin Cuts, and I used just the thin cuts on the glitter paper and then also on sage cardstock to make some leaves. And then all of these little sprigs are stamped with charcoal ink and then die cut with the coordinating dies. And I just think those make some very classy, very pretty cards. And just by switching up the colors of your paper, even you wouldn't have to do this in white, you could do this in whatever colors you wanted. But you can easily get 2 cards out of the same panels. Next up, I want to share this card with you. So you might think, okay, it's just the top layer of that die on white, but actually it's a see-through card front. So I cut this front of the die, I cut it out twice because I wanted a little bit of thickness. You could even do 3 times if you want it even sturdier than that. And then I just glued them together with glue. And then I took a piece of white cardstock, and this is 4 1/4 inches wide. So I made my paper 4 1/4 wide, and the card is, or the die is 5 1/2 tall. So I added an extra 1/8 of an inch, which makes it 5 5/8. Because there's not a very big allowance right here for this to stick to, I had to keep that quite small. So then I just use a little bit of strong liquid glue and glue that on there to make my card. So that's how I got this functioning as a card base. There's that little seam inside there. And then you can see here I have another circle. So I took that same plain white circle. I used the same confetti shaker die. I used the plain circle to cut out the white, and then I used the frame to cut out mint cardstock for that frame. And then I put a second white cardstock on the inside so that it covers up any adhesive and things like that. These beautiful floral stamps are from the December stamp of the month. So this is December 2020. So you can only purchase this stamp in December. If you are a Close to My Heart VIP, you can get it for free with a $60 order. Or if you're not a VIP, you can get it for $6.75 with a $60 order. So it has beautiful sayings, beautiful flowers. And I used one bunch here as well as the sentiments. Sentiments are stamped in charcoal ink. And then I used my Intense ink because I wanted to use alcohol markers. So I stamped in Intense, and then I colored with Copic markers. And I will list all the colors that I used down below. And then when I attach these, I did put them up on foam tape, but you just have to be careful because there are parts of the leaves that are going to show through on the back side. So just be careful with where you put your foam tape to pop that up. But just a really fun card. And if you don't want your message to show, you just have to make sure that it is lined up here. The easy way to do that would be to just cut another circle, take a pencil and trace it, and then fill in what you want to say and then erase your circle. unless you want to just die cut a piece and put it on the back as well. But that way you can make sure that you're within the bounds and you don't have to be trying to erase what's showing through the window. Yeah, so there's just a nice fun see-through card. All right, the last technique that I'm gonna cover in this video is inking. Now, this looks very much like you've seen already with the layers of paper. I made these two cards out of the same pieces because this is actually just ink. So it's completely smooth. You could even do a one-layer card with this if you wanted. I'm just gonna get really close so you can see. I used Distress Oxide inks and they just gave such a beautiful finish and layered up so beautifully. So I'm actually gonna show you that right now. All right, so for this card, I have all 3 pieces cut from white, as well as a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 white cardstock. And now the trick is, whatever colors you want to use, you want to start with your lightest and do the top layer with your lightest. So I have Tattered Rose, Abandoned Coral, and Candied Apple are the colors I decided to go with for this. And you could definitely play around and do all different kinds of combinations. So I'm just gonna line this up with my cardstock. You could even do this right on a card base if you want to do a one-layer card without having to adhere anything down. And then I'm gonna take my washi tape. Actually, I'm gonna take a little bit of tape runner and stick my plain white cardstock down to my mat, because then I know that's not gonna shift on me. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of washi tape and stick down my top panel here. Okay, you can probably see there, I really had to swirl the ink into those little dots on the design. And there is my first layer. I'm gonna go off to the side here and I'm just gonna ink the little areas where the washi tape was. Now, strangely enough, the washi tape leaves a little bit of a residue on the cardstock, so it doesn't cover perfectly. So if you were using a really bold color, you might have a little bit of trouble. You might need to rough up your paper a little bit to get the ink to stick, but with the light color, it actually does a pretty good job. And the only one that's gonna matter is the top layer. So I'm gonna set that aside. And then I'm gonna grab my next layer. So this is the middle one. And I'm just gonna make sure this is lined up with the edge of my cardstock. Now already that's looking super cool. I love how those inks layer on each other. For the last, I'm going to use a third color, and I'm just going to put on my third layer, line that up, and this one is going to be my darkest color. All right, so there we go. There is the finished panel. You can see how there's that little white border along the edge. When I put it on my card, I actually cut it down, cut off that white border and just left the white border of my card showing. But you could definitely leave the border on there. And if you want to, you could even back it with a different color, contrasting color. I used this hummingbird image and I actually colored it with my Copics and then used clear shimmer brush over top of it. The sentiment here is stamped on vellum with archival ink, and then the flowers also colored with Copics. But I was so impressed with how this looked. You could definitely play around with all different kinds of color combinations and just kind of go crazy with it. I was really happy with how that turned out. Now for these ones, I decided just to put it right over my little stack here of inked pieces. Just put it right over the white card base. I could have backed it with some holographic paper, some glitter paper, different color of cardstock. You can even go like a shade deeper of red and put that so it kind of gets darker and darker. And then here I used this happy die cut, and I stacked, I think, about 3 or 4 white cardstock ones, and then put a layer of the pearl paper cut with that die over top, and then silver glitter with the little detail die. I know the stamp set for this is still available on the website, but I think the die is actually sold out. Sorry guys, it was just exactly what I needed for my card, so I went ahead and used it since it is in my stash. I'm trying really hard to use my stash. All right, that's everything I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed all the techniques I shared and that you got some inspiration on ways that you could use this die along with other stamps and things that you have in your collection. I love these layering dies. They are in the September-October catalog, so technically they retire at the end of October 2020, but you might be able to still find them in the online only section of the website after they've retired. But I wanted to make sure I showcase them for you guys, so if you wanted them, you could pick them up before that happens. And I mean, I still have many ideas that I could do with different paper combinations, lots of Christmas ideas. I like how the design can be Christmassy, it can be fall, it can be wedding, it can be spring, it can be pretty much anything you want it to be. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll have everything listed and linked in the description box below. I'll also have my website linked below so you can go and shop and check everything out. All right, have a great day. Bye.